Good afternoon, everyone. It's October 23rd, 2018. I made a short video shortly ago regarding the 200 plus million missing population by the year 2025. I'm going to go into a much more in-depth in this video so we know where all this information is coming from and perhaps how we can do some personal reflection on what the fuck we're going to do as individuals. Now, this comes from the bottom of the page at Deagal.com. You people really need to check it out. You really do. They say there have been many questions about the country's forecasts, especially the one focusing on the United States of America. They won't be answered one by one, but below you can find some explanation, thoughts, and reflections. We are going to keep this as short as possible. The majority of the economic and demographic data used in the making of this forecast is widely available by institutions such as the CIA, IMF, UN, USG, and so on. You can see the most relevant data at every single country's page. There is a tiny part of data coming from a variety of shadowy sources such as internet gurus, unsigned reports, and others, but all these sources are from the internet and are of public domain for at least a minority. For example, several years ago, Deagal, the Chinese ratings agency, published a report analyzing the physical economy of the states, comparing it with those of China, Germany, and Japan. The conclusion was that U.S. GDP was somewhere between 5 and 10 trillion instead of 15 trillion as officially reported by the USG. We assume that the official data, especially economic, released by governments is fake, cooked, or distorted in some degree. Historically, it is well known that the former Soviet Union was making up fake statistics years before its collapse. Western as well as other countries are making up their numbers today to conceal their real state of affairs. We are sure that many people out there can find government statistics in their own countries that by their own personal experience are hard to believe or are so optimistic that they belong in a different country. Despite the numeric data, quantity, there is a quality model which has not a direct translation into numeric data. The 2014 strain of Ebola has a death toll of, or death rate of 50 to 60%. But try to imagine what would happen if there is a pandemic of Ebola with hundreds of thousands or even millions infected with the virus. So far, the few cases of Ebola infected people have enjoyed intensive health care with antiviral and breathing assistance, but above all, with abundant human support by physicians and nurses. Okay, in a pandemic scenario, that kind of health care won't be available for the overwhelming number of infected, leading to a dramatic increase of the death rate due to lack of proper health care. Now, let me stop right there for just a second, and let me tell you, I've been absent for almost a week because I got so sick. My temperature got pretty close to brain boiling. I mean, and let me tell you, you have some crazy ass dreams when you get into that condition. Some crazy ass dreams. And one of the reasons why it got so bad is because the lack of health care that I have. I don't have health care insurance. Every time it seems like I find a job and I get going good in it, something comes along and fucks it up. So, I had to wait until I was really bad before they would take me seriously. And finally, I got the antibiotics that I needed to get rid of this shit. But just think of that being Ebola, or the plague, or Spanish flu. So, they have a good point there. And you must admit, we're hearing a lot more fear-mongering from the likes of, I don't know, Bill Gates and these kind of fuckers. You know, kind of fuckers that say they want to come back as viruses in their next life so they can wipe out humanity. You know, fuckers like that. Not that I have any strong love or even liking to humanity. I think people deserve to know what's happening to them. And this is happening to you, okay? So, the quality factor is that the death rate could increase to 80 to 90% in a pandemic scenario from the stated 50-60% rate. The figure itself is not important. What is relevant is the fact that the scenario can evolve beyond the initial conditions from a 50% death toll to more than 90%. By the way, no pandemic or nuclear war was included in the forecast. Did you hear that? No pandemic or nuclear war is included in that forecast. That's some shit right there. And I have to wonder, what is the figure then, if those things are considered? You have to remember, we have pulled out of treaties recently. You have to remember, Russia and China have developed hypersonic nuclear weapons. You have to remember that most of the countries on this planet are pretty fucking sick of the United States. Pretty fucking sick of us. And, maybe we should be thinking about that. Just how sick and tired of our country the rest of the world is. Fuck. I'm sick and tired of our country. If I can live on Mars, I would go live on Mars. Seriously. Okay, so they say the key element to understand the process that the U.S. will enter in the upcoming decade is migration. In the past, especially in the 20th century, the key factor that allowed the U.S. to rise to its colossal status was immigration, with the benefits of demographic expansion, supporting the credit expansion and the brain drain from the rest of the world, befitting the states. The collapse of the Western financial system will wipe out the standard of living of its population while ending Ponzi schemes such as the stock exchange and the pension funds. The population will be hit so badly by a full array of bubbles and Ponzi schemes that the migration engine will start to work in reverse, accelerating itself due to ripple effects, thus leading to the demise of the states. The unseen situation for the states will develop itself in a cascade pattern with unprecedented and devastating effects for the economy. Jobs offshoring will surely end, with many American corporations relocating overseas, thus becoming foreign corporations. We see a significant part of the American population migrating to Latin America and Asia, while immigration to Europe suffering a similar illness, won't be relevant. So people are going to want to get the fuck out of Europe too. Now, as a white guy, I have a little bit of pride in the things that we've built. But the problem is, we've allowed big money people like George Soros and the Rockefeller family, Gates, you name it, right? We've allowed these people to get a stranglehold on everything. On everything. Now we have no say-so in our own lives because some control-freak billionaires want things one way while we want things a whole another way. And I'm not going to lie to you. I will be glad the day when the day comes that it all fucking falls apart. I will. I will be glad. Now, what happens after that, it's up to those who survive. I hope this time around people do not make the same mistake. I hope that we pave over those little bunkers that they have themselves hiding in for much of this. I hope we weld those big metal doors shut so they can never be opened again and they can fucking live among their own control freaks. I hope. I do. But they go on to say, unprecedented and devastating effects for the economy. Job offshoring will surely end, with many American corporations relocating overseas, thus becoming foreign corporations. We see a significant part of the American population migrating to Latin America and Asia, while migrations to Europe suffering a similar illness won't be relevant. Nevertheless, the death toll will be humble, according to them, taking into account that the Soviet Union's population was poorer than the Americans nowadays, or even then. The ex-Soviets suffered during the following struggle in the 1990s with a significant death toll and the loss of a national pride, or of national pride. Might services economy that will be gone along with the financial system. When pensioners see their retirement disappear in front of their eyes and there are no servicing jobs, you can imagine what's going to happen next. At least younger people can migrate. Never in history were so many elders among the population. In the past centuries, people were lucky to get to their 30s and 40s. The American downfall is set to be far worse than the Soviet Union's downfall. A confluence of crisis with a devastating result. The demographic crisis in the former Soviet Union countries has extended for over 2 decades. If we accept that it ended early in this decade, 2010s, he says, or they, the demographic crisis will hit the world in the near future and is projected to last between 3 and 8 decades, more or less depending on technological breakthrough and environmental issues. The aftermath is more likely a frozen picture with the population number staying the same for a very, very long period of time. The country's forecast population numbers do reflect birth/deaths, but also migratory movements. Many countries are going to increase their gross population due to immigration, while their native population may shrink. Over the past 2,000 years, we have witnessed the Western civilization built around the Mediterranean Sea shifting to Northern Europe, and then by the mid-20th century, shifting to an Atlantic axis to finally get centered into the States in the past 30 years. The next move will see the civilization being centered in Asia, with Russia and China on top. Historically, a change in the economic paradigm has resulted in a death toll that is rarely highlighted by mainstream historians. When the transition from rural areas to large cities happened in Europe, many people, unable to accept the new paradigm, killed themselves. They killed themselves by a psychological factor. This is not mainstream, but it is true. A new crisis joins old, well-known patterns with new ones. So, they believe that a lot of the population in the United States is going to get the fuck out of here. But they did not include the idea of a pandemic or nuclear war in this forecast. We have super wealthy people out there that have not very much love for their fellow man. They have contempt mostly for their fellow man, and they have the means to carry out any operation if they choose to endeavor in. If they want the world dead, they will get the world dead. Just remember, some of us are going to have to remain here. Some of us are going to have to deal with it. And I venture to say it's going to be, the poorest people. Take it easy, people. Have a good day.